Hey, what's going on, everybody? Locked On Badgers. Great guest today. We're going to get into in-state kids football, basketball at the high school level, and some of the in-state recruiting classes from Wisconsin. You're not going to want to miss this. We got Travis Wilson on the show from Wisconsin Sportsnet. They are the best at analyzing and going over the in-state kids from inside Wisconsin's state lines. So you're not going to want to miss this. All that and more on today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts, free and available on YouTube. Appreciate everybody tuning into the show. Like I said, we're going to get into a great guest today. Travis Wilson, we're going to bring him on the show right now. Travis Wilson from Wisconsin Sportsnet. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining on. And we're just going to jump into it. I wanted to start with last year's in-state football class, if you don't mind. And it was a banner year for the state, a ton of talent. And what you guys do is comprehensively cover that in-state talent more than anybody else out there. So losing three guys out of last year's class for the football program, Billy Shrouth, Carson Hinsman, Jerry Cross, was that something that you saw as more of an aberration, or is that something that is more troubling long-term for the Wisconsin Badgers football team?
Well, it was certainly uncommon for Wisconsin to offer that many kids that they did not get. Generally, if they offer a kid, they're going to get a kid from the state of Wisconsin, especially linemen. For Hinsman to head to Ohio State, Shrouth to head to Notre Dame, it wasn't the norm. So whether that's a trend or the start of a trend, or whether it's a one-time aberration, we shall see. But Wisconsin did have a very good recruiting class overall. They did get a number of very talented linemen, and they also have a lot of young linemen still in the program. And so you wonder how much of that played into some of those decisions. They did get our top-ranked lineman from the state of Wisconsin, though, Joe Brunner from Whitefish Bay. Now, I think you could make an argument for Hinsman, or Shrouth as that top-rated lineman. But either way, they got very good kids from the state still. They got Joe Brunner, they got Isaac Ham, Miles Burkett, Barrett Nelson as well. So, they got some very good talent in a very talented class. In addition to some of those guys we talked about, I mean, you had Jack Dotzler, who's headed to Iowa, an offensive lineman from Waunakee, Addison Estrenga from Sun Prairie headed to Iowa. There was a number of really talented kids in that 23 class. There was, I want to say 16 or 18 that ended up going to BCS level type programs, and Wisconsin got several of them. So the long and short of it is Wisconsin's doing very well in state. They still have a great reputation in state with the high school coaches. They're still making those connections, and we'll see if it ends up becoming a trend. We'll talk, I'm sure, about the 23 class in a moment, but I still think things are very solid for Wisconsin. They're in a very good shape, in very good position to continue to dominate in-state recruiting in the state of Wisconsin.
How much of last year's class was, so we talked about the three kids that left to the high-level programs, is that more of a reflection of Wisconsin typically doesn't have 4 to 5 elite level blue chip prospects? Or, because if you're getting into battles with Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, you are going to lose some of those more often than getting into battles with an Iowa or Purdue or whoever else.
Yeah, I think the level that some of those kids were at in the national recruiting attention they got certainly made it more difficult for Wisconsin. I think you could argue that Wisconsin finished second for Shrouth and finished second for Hinsman. It's not like, they were not considering Wisconsin at all. They just chose other offers that were very, very good. Yeah. So I think the level of the offers that those kids got, you understand why they left. And again, Wisconsin got very good kids in this class from the state of Wisconsin anyway. So if they start losing kids to Minnesota and Illinois or some of these other places, aren't necessarily at the level of Wisconsin, then you'd be a little bit more concerned. Kids that are going to be at that level, even kids that are going to get those national level interest, I still think Wisconsin's going to do very well overall going forward.
You talked a little bit about the connections Wisconsin coaches make with the in-state high school coaches. I want to dive into that a little deeper because you would know about this a lot more, and I think it's a really fascinating topic. When Gary Anderson came in at Wisconsin, there was a rumor. I wouldn't even say rumor, but there was a lot of innuendo that those connections with in-state coaches were being destroyed, eroded, ignored. Is that? Can you speak to that at all? And then what does Paul Chryst coming in after the Gary Anderson era? What does he kind of do for those in-state connections on the other end of that?
It is 100% fact that Gary Anderson's tenure at the University of Wisconsin was detrimental to the connections to the high school coaches and the high school programs in the state of Wisconsin. He did not have the same philosophy that Barry Anderson, Brett Bielema, and now Paul Chryst have in terms of what recruiting Wisconsin means and what that should entail. He did not recruit kids that most people thought were talented enough to go to the University of Wisconsin. I think the prime example of that is probably Nate Stanley, quarterback from Menominee, who ended up going to Iowa and, of course, was a multi-year starter for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He left during that process. Paul Chryst came in very late, tried to recruit Stanley, but could not make it work. But there's no doubt that Gary Anderson, not flat out completely ignored the state of Wisconsin, but did not put in that same level of effort to make connections with high school coaches. He wanted to, in his background, was recruiting on the West Coast in California, Washington, Utah, out there. And he did not see the value necessarily in recruiting the state of Wisconsin as much. Something that, had been built and developed under Barry Alvarez, had been continued under Brett Bielema. So when Anderson left, I think there was definitely a sense of relief, to be quite honest with you, with a lot of people, including the high school coaches. And if you've ever heard Barry Alvarez talk about this topic, and I've heard him speak at the WFCA clinic a couple years ago, he does not have a lot of great things to say about Gary Anderson, and has indicated that if Gary Anderson would not have left of his own accord, he probably was not going to be here much longer. Not necessarily just because of the on-field success that he was having, but also because of the way that he was, in some ways, taking the program backwards from the way that Barry Alvarez and Brett Bielema had built it. So when Gary Anderson left, and especially when Paul Chryst was hired, there was a great sense of relief. There was a great sense of, okay, now we're back on track with the high school coaches. And in fact, when Paul Chryst was hired, I did an article on our site connecting with 20 or 30 of the top high school coaches in the state of Wisconsin to get their reactions and to get their thoughts on Paul Chryst coming in. And to a person, every one of them said that it was a good move, that it was a move in the right direction, that they were excited about it, that they were excited about what that was going to mean, not only for the University of Wisconsin, but also for the high school players in the state of Wisconsin, and how there would be a recommitment to recruiting the state of Wisconsin the right way. And that has been the case, certainly. Paul Chryst has those connections. He played high school football in the state. His dad was a legendary Division III college coach in the state. Obviously, Coach Chryst played at Wisconsin, coached at Wisconsin. He's a Wisconsin guy, and he has rebuilt those relationships. Everybody has a different recruiting style. Everybody has a different way of connecting with people. And Coach Chryst certainly does a great job. He's at the WFCA clinic every year. His coaches are there every year. His coaches are out in the high school programs and watching kids and being involved. They invite the high school coaches to come to practices. They invite the high school coaches to members that are of the WFCA to attend games. So they're making an effort, a specific effort, to make sure they connect with that high school coach and with the high school coaches in the state of Wisconsin. So it has certainly improved. They have gotten back on track. They have gotten outstanding players to the University of Wisconsin, and it's going to continue. I mean, again, you're going to lose a couple kids here or there. Losing 3 in the 2022 class was a little bit of an aberration, a little bit of a surprise, but they will get back to that. And just good things moving forward in terms of the relationship with the high school coaches in Wisconsin.
That is an awesomely insightful answer. Coming up, guys, We're going to keep Travis Wilson as long as humanly possible. We're going to talk about the 2023 class coming up next. A little lighter potentially, but I think there's some hidden talent in there. So we're going to get into that next. But first, one of the sponsors of the show, Built Bar. Built Bar is continued to be my fitness companion on this journey I'm on in 2022, trying to be a little healthier, going to the gym, throwing a Built Bar in my backpack. You know, if you want something that you can reach for, that tastes good, that makes you want to reach for it, but also makes you feel good about eating it, Built Bar is the way to go. Everything's a 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein or more, about 3 grams of sugar, an incredible variety of flavors and tastes: marshmallow, banana cream pie, cinnamon churro, coconut. So basically the entire spectrum, lifestyle friendly, cheap, inexpensive, tastes great. And again, it's something that you're going to eat it and feel good about eating it. It's going to fuel your body. It's going to keep you coming back for more. You're not going to regret it. Most Built Bars, again, 130 calories or less, 17 to 20 grams of protein, something that you're really going to feel good about going towards, reaching towards, and it's going to help you on your fitness journey. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your order on built.com. And thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. We're going to bring Travis back into the show. We want to really start again, Travis. You guys are experts at what you do. There's no better source for Wisconsin high school athletic coverage. So please, where can people find your work? Where can people go enjoy all your content?
Well, make sure you check out wissports.net if you have not for some reason already. It is really your daily destination for high school sports in the state of Wisconsin. Whether you're just looking for basic information like schedules, roster, game results, standings for your favorite team in most of the high school sports, you can find it on wissports.net. But if you're looking for more in-depth information and you want to find out about some of these high school players, if you want to find out about, preseason team and conference previews, if you want to find out about recruiting information, playoff previews, all that good stuff, you can find that as well at wissports.net with our great staff. Mark Miller covers our boys basketball, Norbert Durst, girls basketball. I take care of our football writing on wissports.net. But again, whether you're just a casual fan and looking for basic information or you want to go more in depth, wissports.net should be your daily destination. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, at TravisWSN. You can also follow our WisSports account at WisSportsNet. Again, everything that you're going to need for high school sports in Wisconsin.
And guys, the amount of content they put out is unreal. And there's not going to throw any names out there, but there's recruiting sites out there that don't even have the top 5 or 10 Wisconsin prospects for 2023. And you can go to WisSportsNet and find all of that there. We're going to link all that information in the bio of the show as well, guys. So you can go hop over there, give them a follow, give them a like, give them a listen. Check out what they're doing because they put out an enormous amount of Wisconsin content. I want to kind of jump into the 2023 football class in state high school. We talked a little bit about last year's class, which I agree with you. Even losing a couple guys, the in-state class, what Wisconsin brought into the program was really strong. This class is a little different. There isn't that high-end blue chip talent in state, but I do think there's some really talented players. I want to get your feel on the 2023 in-state high school football class.
Yeah, definitely a different story in 23 compared to 22 and in compared to most years, in fact. As of right now, there's one player in the class that has a Wisconsin Badgers offer, and that is Nate White, a running back from Milwaukee King. Very dynamic athlete, very special with the ball in his hands. Bright future for him, especially as a kid in Milwaukee that did not get to play his sophomore year when they completely canceled their season. So always good to see those Milwaukee kids get recruited and get recognized because there's a lot of talent down there. Outside of that, no Badger offers yet. There's some kids that have gotten some, lower level D1 offers, some kids that are getting, Iowa State type of offers, but I just don't know if we're going to have any other Wisconsin Badger scholarship offers in this class, to be honest with you. It's a very deep class. When I was doing my player rankings in February, you could almost have put anybody 1 through 50 in a hat, drew them out in any order, and I don't think you would have been wrong necessarily. There's just not a lot of separation. There's good players. There's outstanding high school football players. There's kids that are going to be very good college players at some level, but there is not that national recruit. There is not a lot of those kind of regional high-level Division I recruits even. So it is a lighter class from that perspective. And in fact, when we're talking FBS scholarship offers, it might be about the lowest number that we've seen in any class since I've started doing this almost 15 years ago. Again, does not mean they're not good players or whatever. It's just they're not quite at that level. There's not a consensus that they're at that level. But there are some interesting athletes in the mix, and it will be interesting to see if any do get an offer, especially out of those summer camps that Wisconsin has coming up in June, where traditionally there are a couple kids that kind of, stand out from those events, kids that are a little bit under the radar. Maybe they have focused on a different sport in the past. Maybe they have great measurables and did not get to play a lot last year, whatever it might be. Wisconsin often does offer a couple of kids out of those summer camps. And a lot of times they're kids that are not necessarily super high on our radar or super high in our rankings initially. They're kind of those under the radar kids. JT Seagreaves last year was a prime example of that. He was very late in the recruiting process, had focused a lot on basketball coming in. But, at his measurables at 6'5", 225, he had an outstanding track and field season last year. He was running, 100 and 200 meters and doing very well, and then had a big performance at camp and got an offer out of that. So that's the kind of kid that we could see maybe kind of rise up and get an offer from Wisconsin at those camps. Some kids that are in the mix, I think, that I really like. Xander Rockow from Regis is a kid I really, really like. Linebacker and running back for them. He had a great performance at the WFCA Combine that was held this past weekend down at Next Level in Waukesha, where Brad Arnett trains the Watt brothers and a whole bunch of guys. 6'1", 225, ran 4.57 in the 40, had one of the best vertical jumps, one of the best short shuttles, bench pressed 185 pounds 25 times. He has the athletic profile. There's a little bit of positional questions on him. Is he a linebacker? Is he a fullback? If he's a fullback, not a lot of schools have fullbacks. So talking to some of the coaches that were there, and there were some D1 FCS coaches there, there was a little bit of a question there in terms of positional, positions for him. But I'll tell you, he reminds me a lot of Leo Chenal and the Chenal brothers. When they were coming out of Grantsburg High School a few years ago, they participated in our WFCA Combine. They had the look. They had those kinds of measurables, and he's very comparable to those guys. So I think he's a kid, worst case scenario, he's a perfect walk-on for Wisconsin, either at a linebacker or running back, fullback position. But I think he's gonna get some of those Division I type offers. He's a kid that I really like, that I think is kind of under the radar right now, even though I have him ranked coming in back in February as our number one player in the class. There's some other kids. Will McDonald from Hudson, kid that I really like as well. His brother Cade is at Wisconsin. He performed very well at the WFCA Combine. Brett Hoppy from Turner. There's kind of those under the radar kids, and it's a really strong group of quarterbacks as well. Not probably kids that Wisconsin's going to take as a scholarship quarterback, but there's talent there. Nalin Tabasca from Brookfield East is a tight end prospect that Wisconsin has met with, and he's visited several times. That maybe he's that kind of kid that performs well at summer camp and gets an offer. So there's talent to be had. Maybe Wisconsin grabs some of those kids as preferred walk-ons, but there's some good kids. But again, we're just waiting to see if any of them break out and become that high-level D1.
Well, that hit rate from those summer camps for the Badgers is typically pretty good. When I think this is a very good Badger staff in terms of seeing talent and pouncing on it. You hit on the guys I mentioned, Xander Rockow, who I think I would like to see him get a scholarship. McDonald is another one. Give me a quick over-under. Over-under Badger offers to in-state kids this year. If I put it at 2.5, are we going to go over that, do you think, or are we going to stay under that?
I would say probably under. Obviously, again, Nate White has that scholarship offer right now, so there's one, and then it might just be one, possibly. I mean, no guarantee even, but it might just be one out of those summer camps. I would say under as of, let's say, November. Now, after November, and some of the kids that bloom late, or if Wisconsin's looking to fill spots in their class, possibly. I don't know 100% where they're at in terms of number of scholarships available, but maybe you could see one or two guys get that late offer again, because Wisconsin has missed on some other kids or whatever. But certainly, I would say through like November, I would take the under on 2.5.
Wow. I mean, that, like you said, that would be not just compared to last year, but for a typical Wisconsin in-state class, that is just really light. One last in-state 23 kid I want to talk to you about, and then I have one more kind of quick segment. Again, I really appreciate the time, man. I'm going to run out of time before I run out of questions, I promise. Chase Spellman, you mentioned the quarterback group. You mentioned that it's unlikely, just, again, we're early, but you think it's probably unlikely one of those guys picks up a Badger offer. Where's Spellman maybe, I don't, deficient's the wrong word, but where is he maybe need to make up some ground to get to that D1 offer level from a school like Wisconsin?
Well, one of the problems that he had is he was hurt last year, and there were some injury questions and concerns. He played through a pretty significant shoulder injury last year. Ideally, he probably would have had surgery and sat out, but he played through it. So there's that injury concern with him. He's got good size. I mean, they list him at 6'3", 225. He's got a good, strong arm. But I tell you, quarterback recruiting is the hardest thing to project, and it's the hardest thing for colleges to do as well, because obviously it's the most important position on the field for most schools. The other part of it is a lot of colleges, they'll offer one quarterback at a time. So it's not like offensive linemen where they'll offer 20. And there's a bunch in the pool, right? With quarterback recruiting, they might offer one or a couple at a time. And so you might be 2 or 3 on the list of a pretty good school, but if they're focused on that number one guy and that number one guy keeps them in the mix and doesn't commit for a while, you're kind of left out in the dark. And we've seen that happen a number of times over the years with, I thought, kids that had that talent level to be a Division I quarterback in the state of Wisconsin, which is relatively rare, but did not get that offer. And they ended up doing very well somewhere. You think about guys like Sean McGuire from Franklin going back 6 or 8 years ago, was a multi-year starter, very good player down at Western Illinois. James Morgan out of Ashwaubenon, who went to Bowling Green, and then I think it was Florida International, and got drafted. And I think he's still in the NFL with the Jets, I want to say. Again, Nate Stanley, even though I thought Wisconsin should have offered him to begin with, but that was when Gary Anderson was looking for, dual threat type quarterbacks. I mean, it's tough to project because, there's a lot more variables. There's a lot more that goes into quarterback recruiting. And a lot of times the offensive coordinator and or the quarterback coach have to sign off on a kid at that position. It's not like, offensive line. Yes, an offensive line coach is going to have a say on something, but the geographic coach, the regional coach, a lot of times can, even if he's the D-backs coach, but he recruits Wisconsin or whatever, he might be able to offer a kid without, the offensive line coach being as involved as they are at the quarterback position. Or again, the quarterback coach, the offensive line or offensive coordinator, head coach, everybody's got to be on the same page and move forward with that. But yeah, certainly Chase Spellman is in that mix. It'll be interesting to see if he gets, first of all, kind of that upper level FCS type offer, and maybe if he gets a FBS offer of some kind, even if it's a Ball State or a Miami of Ohio MAC type school. At this point in time, unless he has a really strong summer showing, it seems unlikely he'll get to that Big Ten type level of a Minnesota or a Purdue, something like that, but we'll see. But I tell you, there's a number of other quarterbacks that are very close, and it's hard to differentiate them. Jerry Kaminsky from Sun Prairie, who's the son of their head coach, Brian Kaminsky. Jackson Flotmeyer from Aquinas is a kid that I really like. He's 6'6", 220 pounds, throws it pretty well. Has visited a number of schools and is kind of in that mix as well. Now, with his body type, he could be a kid that could maybe move to tight end potentially. But you've also got some other kids in there. Nate Collett from Sussex Hamilton, Mason Keys from DeForest, Gabe Herman from De Pere, AJ Korth from Menasha. In my top 50 in the state of Wisconsin in the 23 class, I think I had 9 quarterbacks total, which is not the norm in Wisconsin. But just like kind of that overall group, I think you could argue any of those in any order and not necessarily be wrong. So
it probably would. It wouldn't surprise you. Probably one of those, maybe even a couple, but probably just one ends up as a preferred walk-on somewhere down the road for Wisconsin. They take somebody from that group as a developmental type.
Yeah, you would think so. I don't know 100% where their depth chart sits and how many kids they have coming and going. But yeah, I mean, I would think one of those at least they'll try to get as a preferred walk on and fill that quarterback room. I think they usually try to have 5 or 6 guys at
Yep.
least in that room, even if only 3 or 4 of them are on scholarship. So I don't anticipate any of those guys getting scholarship offers from Wisconsin, but I would anticipate at least one will probably end up at least with a preferred walk-on offer, if not head to Wisconsin as a preferred walk-on.
That's awesome. Guys, coming up, we're going to do one more really quick segment with Travis again. I'm going to keep him as long as humanly possible. But really quick, one more note from our sponsor, Rock Auto. Rock Auto is the #1 way to buy auto parts, car parts in 2022. Mobile device, go to the website. It's incredibly easy to use. You basically just drop down menus, your car year, your make, your model, what do you need? It's all easy to use, easy to read, easy to follow. And you're going to get the best price for 30, 50, sometimes even 100% cheaper than you would at your local car parts store where you go in, you're going to have to wait. And you may not even get what you really need. It's somebody punching in things into a computer. They're going to give you what they have in their warehouse, even if it's not the best fit for your car, if it's not the perfect fit for your car. Okay. Don't be at the mercy of what they have in their warehouse. Rock Auto stocks everything you're going to need. You get exactly what you need shipped to you. And if you're a DIYer, this is the absolute perfect way to do it. You're going to save money. It's a family business. They've been doing it for 20 years. Their prices are low and their customer service is off the charts. So go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks again for making making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. We're going to bring Travis back in and finish up this amazing interview. I had an earlier segment talking to someone else. I was talking about some of the walk-ons from last year's class, and I really wanted to pick your brain on this. I think Luna Larson and Cam Fain are just total steals as walk-ons, and I'm not trying to go over the deep end. Not most walk-ons don't work out. What are your thoughts on those two? Because those two, to me, when I watched the film, those are scholarship guys.
Yeah, well, Luna Larson is a scholarship guy and had scholarship offers from North Dakota and a few other schools. So he had scholarship opportunities, but like many kids that we've seen over the years, chose to turn down some of those scholarship offers to pursue that dream of being a Wisconsin Badger. That's worked out pretty well in the past, obviously. The history of walk-ons at the University of Wisconsin is well documented. The success that they've had, including recently. I mean, I can't remember if there were 6 or 8 walk-ons total heading in this year, but based on past history, 3 or 4 of those kids are going to be at least contributors, if not starters, at some point in their career. Luna Larson has that profile. He's a strong physical kid, played quarterback and linebacker at Baraboo. He did get hurt his senior year, missed a couple games there. I don't think that significantly impacted his recruiting because most of that was done ahead of time, obviously. But he's got the goods. He's got the makeup, the physical makeup to be successful. Obviously going to come in and play at linebacker for Wisconsin. I don't know if they'll have him at inside or outside, but he's got the athletic ability. He's got the frame. He's got the build. He's got the football smarts. And we all know how much Wisconsin loves taking kids that play quarterback and put them at other positions because they recognize the understanding that you have to have as a quarterback of the game of football in general, and that translates well to other positions. And again, he's played linebacker. He was an all-state linebacker. He'll hit you. He's a physical kid. When he played quarterback, he looked to run you over and hit you. That was what he did. So I think Luna Larson profiles as that perfect Wisconsin preferred walk-on that's going to come in, probably play special teams his first or second year, be in the mix as a rotational guy in a couple of years, and potentially be a starter down the road. Cam Fain is an interesting story as a kid that started his high school career in Wisconsin, transferred down to Texas for a couple of years, came back to the state of Wisconsin, played for Edgewood this year, but there was some controversy because he actually was not eligible, not supposed to be eligible to play. And so Edgewood actually had to be removed from the playoffs because he was technically ineligible, and they used him throughout the year. So, but he did put up a very good senior year at Edgewood. He's got a good physical makeup. He's not an elite 4.3 type athlete, but I think he's a kid that could be in that mix for for something down the road. You know, the hit rate on those guys that end up playing linebacker or line is a little bit higher than some of the guys that play skill positions or elsewhere. Although we all know the stories of Luke Swan and Jared Abbrederis and some
Alex
of these other
Erickson.
guys that have come in, Alex Erickson, absolutely, that have come in and done good things at that receiver position. I mean, the Dunn brothers, Jack and Bobby, you know, they weren't scholarship guys, and they made their way in and did some things and made some contributions as well. So he's a kid that could be in that mix also. But as always, I mean, I really like the walk-on group that Wisconsin got. And that tradition just keeps going.
And let me leave you on this, and then I want to throw your contact information out there again. I've already kept you for 30 minutes. And this is just I'm going to throw this out to you. How long have you been covering Wisconsin high school sports? You said about 15 years?
Yeah, I think this will be my 15th football season coming up this year.
What's the best in-state athlete, just off the top of your head, that you've ever seen?
Well, on the football side, and this is a multi-sport kid, I just saw him last week at the WFCA Combine. He's doing some training and private training down in the Lake Geneva area. In my opinion, the best high school football player and may have been the best overall prospect that I've ever seen is Dominic Sizauskas from Aguanago.
Really?
Unfortunately, he never got to play at the University of Wisconsin because of a conviction for sexual assault, a well-documented story. He was on his campus visit and got kicked off the team before he even got here. A bad story all around, but I'll tell you, from just most talented kid, that's the kid. That kid should be in the NFL right now. He had everything to do it: the size, the ability, the speed, the strength. He's as good as I've seen, which is saying a lot because obviously there have been some really talented kids that come out of the state of Wisconsin. TJ Watt played at Pewaukee while I was covering high school football in Wisconsin. Unfortunately, I did not get to see him in person in high school, but obviously scouted him and followed his story. He was a very good player, but honestly, it was not guaranteed that he was going to be a Badger type kid. I mean, he didn't get a ton of offers outside of Wisconsin. Derek Watt, was at one point, I believe, had planned to go to Northwestern, and then ended up coming back to Wisconsin. They found him some money and some scholarship money. Certainly the offensive line groups in the state of Wisconsin have been incredible. Just so many talented offensive linemen that have come through the state over the years. So it's been fun. I mean, I've got to see in person most of these kids that have gone on to great careers at the University of Wisconsin or elsewhere and have gone on to, great success at the NFL level. But honestly, the best player I've seen, Dominic Sizauskas, and again, it's an unfortunate situation, the way that happened, and he didn't get that shot because of obviously mistakes that he made. That's where I'd put it. But I mean, gosh, it's been so fun to see some of these kids. You think about guys like Melvin Gordon. I mean, I saw him play in high school, and another guy that never got that shot in college really was Vontae Jackson, his teammate.
I was just going to ask about him. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the guys in that area felt like he was more talented than Melvin Gordon, but numerous knee injuries derailed his career before they ever got started. But it's been fun. I mean, we've had so many incredible players in the state over the years that it's been pretty special to get to see and cover those guys.
Travis, man, I appreciate the time. Was one more time your Twitter account, and we're going to link everything that you have in our bio as well.
Yep, follow me at TravisWSN. Beware of Packers and Brewers and Badgers tweets occasionally as well, but generally try to stick to the high school sporting realm. We do cover certainly more than just football on WisSports.net. So if you're a high school basketball fan, I'm sure you're already on there as well. But we also have information on baseball, softball, volleyball, soccer. Be sure to check it out at WisSports.net, daily destination for all high school sports in the state of Wisconsin.
Travis, thank you again so much. And thank you also for everyone listening, making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. I'm going to link everything from Travis in the show. Again, everything they do is incredible. The amount of content they put out, it's unparalleled. And I highly recommend if you want deeper insight into the kids that Wisconsin's looking at and just what's going on within the state. You go check them out. Thank you for making Locked On Badgers first listen every day, guys, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.